Through 4 seasons in the NFL, the story of Jameis Winston has been a relatively interesting one, but honestly a kind of disappointing one. He was a hugely hyped up prospect coming out of the draft, and us Bucs fans really felt promising about him entering the NFL. We really thought we had a top 5 quarterback in the NFL next year, however that just didn't work out. Whether you're a pro Jameis or anti Jameis, there's no doubt about it, he just has not lived up to the hype that he had coming out of college. He just hasn't. But that also doesn't mean that he's been a disaster by any means, and in fact, if you look at his stats aren't just fine, his stats are pretty great. I mean, he averaged 7.9 yards per attempt both of his last 2 seasons. He would have had around 4,500 yards had he played a full season last year, so he definitely has some talent. And he was also 9th best in points gained per snap last year, so definitely when you look at the stats, he's a very talented player, at least in terms of what the stats say. However, of course, stats can be misleading, so let's just jump into it with this play. One of the things you'll constantly hear about Jameis Winston is the fact that he feels like he can make any throw, but oftentimes he can make those throws. Like, if you take a look at this one, it's going to be a cover 2 man, and Mike Evans is going to be running that out route right over there. And once Mike Evans is on the stem portion of this route, if you see right now, this is actually good positioning for Evans, because he's past the Cleveland defender who's in charge of covering him, and since he's already past him, this is not going to make for an easy cut. So for Winston, he's going to make this throw before Evans even does cut. He just sends it right his way, and Evans is able to make the catch and able to pick up a decent gain. It kind of goes to show the faith that Winston has in Evans, and also just goes to show the chemistry of he knows exactly when to throw that route. After all, they have been playing together for 4 years now, so they definitely kind of have that timing down. But I like that read from Jameis, because he read that it was going to be man coverage very quickly, and then he knew the out route would be open. And also, Mike Evans is clearly the guy he likes to go to in those types of situations, so when he has a route that he knows will be a good way to beat man coverage, and it's his number 1 receiver, well, that's where he's going to throw the ball to. This play is kind of a better example of him feeling like he can make every throw. It's going to be a cover 3 zone, and what Tampa Bay is going to do is run play action and then have a receiver running a crossing route right over there. So again, these types of plays I show all the time. It's kind of football 1-on-1. You get to play action to move the linebackers in, you throw it over the top of them and try to hit the receiver. That's the way it's supposed to work. And so as you see, once this play develops, that receiver does appear to be open, but he's actually not as open as it might look just from this bird's eye view. Largely because of that Cleveland Brown right over there. Yes, he is kind of closer in, but he's still going to be able to leap up and try to knock this ball away. I mean, think about it. If you tried to throw it to a guy who was 15 yards away and there was someone else who was almost perfectly in between you, it would be a very tough throw to make because you have to throw it over the top of them. Not to mention, if Winston throws this one a bit too high, this could be an interception. So even though right now it looks like the receiver is open, really that's a tight window for him to hit this ball to. But he is going to make the throw. It's a perfect throw and it leads to a first down. I mean, that's just as good of a throw as you can make in that situation. Also, one more example will be something like this, where it's going to be a cover 2 zone, and what Tampa Bay is going to do is have one receiver run a curl route, which is just barely in that zone, second highest to the top half of the screen. And then they'll send another receiver deeper in that zone, and basically the idea is the 49er who's in charge of covering that zone can only cover one of those Tampa Bay players, and Winston can then just hit the other player. That's the way this play is supposed to work. And as you see right now, there is going to be a Tampa Bay player who is going to get open. This play is working out pretty well. Winston can hit the deeper man, but again, this is a tough throw, because of course, if that 49er realizes what's going on and breaks down to the bottom half of the screen, this could easily be an interception. Because as you see, if you look at Winston, he's already throwing this ball. He's already made his decision. He's already going to try to make this work, and he doesn't know for a fact that it will work as of right now. He really has no idea. He's basically just trusting that this play will work, and that ends up being the correct decision as it does work, but it definitely could have not worked as well. That was definitely a risk that Winston took. You also notice he threw that one a little bit higher, and I could say the reason for that was because he wanted to make sure that it was farther away from the 49er who could leap up and make the play, although it's definitely also possible that he just missed the throw a little bit. You know, it's hard to really tell. This next one's another interesting one where it's going to be a cover 1 blitz, and Tampa Bay has a receiver that's actually running a pretty decent route to try to beat a cover 1 blitz because it's breaking over to the middle of the screen, and this means that Winston can try to hit him. It's a really easy angle for Winston since there's no one taking over the middle of the screen. This is definitely a route that Winston should look to throw to once he sees that it's going to be a cover 1 blitz. And his receiver is a little bit open. Not wide open, but a little bit open. Although there's one more thing to worry about right now, and it's going to be that 49er right over there who's a defensive lineman who is in charge of making sure he gets to Jameis Winston. However, he got blocked pretty good here and now can't really do that. So what he's going to do is he's going to leap up and get his hands up. He's going to try to knock this ball away. So again, it's a tight window for Winston to try to hit this ball through, but he is once again going to fit it through that tight window and results in another first down. But of course, if every play was like that and he was always fitting it through those tight windows, he'd be the best quarterback in the league. Of course, that is not what he is like. He makes some mistakes sometimes, there's no getting around that, and this one will be an example of that. It's going to be a cover 2 man, and those are going to be the routes that Tampa Bay's receivers will be running. Now, the route that Winston is going to look to is going to be that one, which makes a lot of sense. That's a great route to throw to against the cover 2 man. Since again, there's no one in the middle of the screen, you want something with a cut, and since it is cutting over the middle, this is actually a great route to throw to if you're Winston, and that is where he's going to look to throw to. And actually, as you see once this play develops, that receiver is open. So right off the bat, this seems like an easy throw for Winston to make, and he definitely should be making this throw, correct? Well, yes, except there's one problem. Take a look at that Cleveland Brown right over there. He's in charge of covering the halfback, who's going to be running out to the flat. However, the halfback is going to be a little bit slow in getting out there, and this now means that Cleveland Brown is going to be in the area of where a throw could be. But again, Winston is at the point where he's already made his decision. He's already decided where he wants to throw this ball to, and it ends up being regrettable as it results in an interception. There's always logic behind the throws he's trying to make, but just sometimes he just makes the wrong throws. Sometimes things that should have worked out on paper don't end up working out, but because he makes that decision kind of a second before he throws the ball, it results in some throws that he just shouldn't make. And again, it should be mentioned, those aren't all of his interceptions. There are some other kinds. Like on this one, it's going to be zone coverage, and Tampa Bay does have a receiver running right there that could kind of get into a gap over there. And so basically what's going to have to happen here is the linebacker is going to have to actually move out to go back and make sure he's covering up that gap. And if you take a look right now, this is actually great positioning for a receiver, because this is Chris Godwin here, and all he has to do is turn around and he can actually look at the ball, whereas the linebacker is going to have to basically face the back of the end zone to make sure he's keeping pace with Godwin. So as long as Winston can get it over the linebacker, Godwin could make this catch. So again, there's kind of a tight window here. Basically, he has to get it above the Falcons' head, but he can't throw it too high because then it would be an incomplete pass. So Winston has somewhat of a tight window to make, but look at what's going to end up happening here. He misses the throw just barely a little bit too low. It actually bounces off a Falcons helmet and then ends up getting intercepted. It's not a good play. You never like red zone interceptions, but honestly, if I'm just being honest, I don't have a problem with that play too much. I mean, yes, it missed, but I'm kind of from the school of thought of, hey, some of these guys just have to make those types of throws. Every now and then it is going to result in interception, but 9 times out of 10 it results in a touchdown, and I'm okay with those odds. A lot of people will say Winston shouldn't just keep throwing as though he can make every throw, and while I do agree to some extent, I think those kind of throws I'm totally okay with. It would be nicer to kind of see him make those decisions a little bit later, but honestly, I think that was the correct decision. It just didn't work out. Sometimes that's going to happen. I would personally rather a guy who's going to take that shot and eventually it will result in some interceptions over a guy that's not even going to take that shot to begin with and will just throw it away, because at least with Jameis Winston, a lot of times that will result in a touchdown. You know, you're gambling 3 points there, but you're gambling 3 points to pick up 7, so as long as you feel like you have a better than 50% chance of making that play, it's kind of worth it. Of course, if it's a third down, not necessarily if it's a first down, but you know, I think it's an okay decision for him to make, even though it didn't work out. But it also should be mentioned that those are not the only kind of interceptions Winston makes. There's also something like this, where it's going to be a cover 2 zone, and they have a receiver running right there, which could get into the gap in the middle of the screen. And after the ball is snapped and the play develops, there definitely is a window for Winston trying to make this throw. Again, not a huge window because the linebackers are pretty deep, so Winston is going to have to throw this one high. However, he throws this one too high and it's intercepted. It was also a little bit behind Mike Evans, so that's not great either, so it is kind of a little bit like that last one in a sense that there wasn't a huge window. But it also just should be mentioned that Winston, he has a bit of an accuracy problem. He really does. There will be times where he just makes some bad throws, where you see where he's trying to throw it to and he just completely whiffs on his throw. I mean, it happened. And if I'm being honest, as a Buccaneers fan who's watched literally every snap he's ever played, I probably would say that that's his most negative attribute, is his accuracy, not his decision making. Throughout the course of a game, I would actually say that his decision making is good, but every now and then he will make a not great decision where, you know, it'll be something like this where he tries to fit it through a tight window, but then he'll also miss the throw and that results in the interception. He just has a little bit of inconsistency in the throwing game from time to time. He absolutely does. However, just because he's inconsistent doesn't mean that he's always bad. It actually means the opposite. It means you're sometimes bad and sometimes good. That's what inconsistency means, in case you didn't know. But just because he will make some bad throws from time to time doesn't mean he won't make some good throws from time to time, and here he'll do just that. It's zone coverage, and Tampa Bay is really going to try to sell as though this could be a rushing play by the way they have a fullback and a halfback in the game. However, it is not going to be a rushing play, and in fact, they're going to have their tight end run that route right there. So the idea behind this, kind of in a sense, is that they're not even going to actually run play action, but basically because of the formation, it could fool the New York Giants into thinking that this could be a rushing play. But that actually didn't work out too well. I mean, both of these New York Giants are doing a good job of staying where they're supposed to be. The linebacker has gotten pretty far back, and there is not a big window at all here. But notice how Winston takes his time, is patient, and throws his ball at the exact right time, and also throws a very accurate pass for a big completion. The patience is what really impressed me personally, because if he threw that ball the second that there was a receiver kind of open, it would have been a much smaller window, but because he waited just a little bit longer, that window got a lot bigger. Sometimes guys panic and try to throw the ball to second they see someone open, and honestly that's something that we've definitely seen Jameis Winston do over the years, but he has improved a lot this last year at not doing that, especially in the later half of the season. One thing I like about Winston a lot actually is his athletic ability. He's kind of sneakily athletic. I think a lot of people see his 4.97 40-yard dash and say, okay, this guy is not necessarily the most nimble guy, but he actually has some decent footwork despite the fact that he's not the fastest guy. I mean, footwork and acceleration means a lot more than just speed, and Winston definitely has the footwork to make himself a decent running quarterback. Like on this play, what's going to be key here is that Carolina Panther right over there is actually going to be rushing in and trying to rush Jameis Winston, and the Tampa Bay offensive line isn't going to notice this, meaning he's going to have basically a straight shot to Winston. See, as of right now, I mean, he's 2 feet away from Winston, and he hasn't been touched at all, so Winston is in trouble here. But also, there's another thing happening that's going to be, if you look right over there, in between the right tackle and right guard, there kind of is a gap where Winston could try to run through, but it's not a huge gap also, there's a small gap. So he's going to have the acceleration to get through quick enough that no Carolina Panther can really get a hand on him, and while a couple Carolina Panthers were able to touch him, they weren't really able to get enough because he did accelerate quick enough, and that's how he was able to get through there. So now a lot of guys at this point would say, okay, I got a couple yards, now I'll just slide and say, hooray, I got a couple of yards, when really that could have been easily a sack. But really, Winston isn't the type of guy that goes down too often. Notice how he keeps running and picks up another 7 to 10 yards after the fact. As a Bucs fan, you know, I'd kind of always say that's what you love about Jameis Winston, and also what you hate about Jameis Winston is the fact that he just won't go down in those situations. He gives 110% every play. If he sees he'll pick up another 7 yards and it won't be a massive hit, he'll take it every time. I mean, that's just kind of what he does. He's an unbelievably competitive guy. I mean, there's absolutely no quitting him. And honestly, one of the things that always bothers me about Jameis Winston is people will say things like he doesn't have the best work ethic, and that's just insane to me. Anyone who's ever been around him always talks about how his work ethic is insane, how he just is always at the gym, he's always trying to improve. Maybe it hasn't worked out so well, but he definitely is always trying to improve. A lot of people have made the comparison that Jameis Winston is kind of like Josh Freeman. You know, Freeman showed a lot of promise his first couple years with Tampa Bay, but then kind of completely fell off the face of the earth. But in my opinion, I don't like that comparison at all, because allegedly, I don't know the guy, but apparently Josh Freeman just stopped caring about football altogether. His heart wasn't in it, whereas Jameis Winston, his heart is all in it. Winston cares more about football than I care about anything. I mean, he loves football so much, so I really don't like that comparison at all. I don't think it's fair. But anyways, one more play with Winston about using his footwork will be this one. Really, the block you want to take a look at here will be the right guard taking on that Saint right there. And not really because of what the guard is going to do, but mostly because of what the Saint is going to do. He kind of stumbles over and falls down. And since the Saint's edge rusher was kind of too far over to the top half of the screen, this now means that there is going to be a gap in between them where Winston could run through if he chooses to. So he does do that, and again, kind of similar situation to last time, where he could just slide here, say, okay, I picked up a couple yards out of not really a lot being there, but hey, at least I picked up a couple of yards. However, again, Winston refuses to go down, and he even breaks a tackle and picks up a decent gain. Again, he's not exactly the most graceful runner, no one's going to confuse him with Michael Vick, but it is good to know that he can pick up some yards even when that's not necessarily what he's trying to do. It's also good that he can use his scrambling ability, and he's also a very good on-the-run thrower. I didn't really talk about that in this video. I have talked about it in another video actually, which I'll try to link in the description below. Assuming I don't forget, that's what I'll do. But Jameis Winston definitely can use his feet if he has to.